A new lease on life came with a grim price. I wasn't killed by the zombies but by my neighbor, a cold-hearted thief. My dying wish must have been heard because when I opened my eyes again, I was a month away from the zombie apocalypse. The streets were teeming with people, laughter, and the simple beauty of everyday life. It was hard to believe that in just one short month, this peaceful city would become a living hell. I knew exactly when and where it would all begin. A month from this very day, a new strain of the zombie virus would break out. The coastal metropolis, B City, would be its first victim. I was in the B1 level supermarket of a shopping mall when an employee in the fresh food section collapsed. Soon the entire city would follow. I was standing in the prepared food area, watching the commotion, and a familiar sense of dread washed over me. I've learned to trust my instincts, and this time they were screaming for me to get out. I grabbed my full cart and headed for the self-checkout. It was a holiday weekend, October 5th, and the store was packed. I joined a long line, my mind racing. I told myself an ambulance would arrive soon, but my gut told me something was very, very wrong. I looked around, and everyone was still lost in their holiday cheer. I shook my head, blaming my anxiety on a late night. I just needed to pay and go home to get some rest. I quickly checked out and rushed towards the elevator. The doors opened, and just as I stepped inside, a piercing scream echoed from the supermarket. I hit the button to close the doors, ignoring the confused stares of others. The elevator descended, and I finally breathed a sigh of relief, though I felt a little embarrassed by my panicked actions. The elevator chimed, and I was on B2, the parking garage. I grabbed my bags, sprinted to my car, and threw them on the passenger seat. I started the engine and drove toward the exit. While waiting for the car ahead of me to pay, I opened my phone to pay my parking fee in advance. In my rearview mirror, I saw people running from the elevators and escalators, their faces etched with terror. Chaos erupted as car alarms blared, children cried, and people scrambled for their cars. I didn't hesitate. I followed the car ahead and sped out of the garage. It was then that I realized the scale of the disaster. An ambulance was parked outside the south gate of the supermarket, but the streets were blocked by a panicked crowd. I swerved into a back alley to escape. A chilling thought crossed my mind. What if it wasn't a robbery or a terrorist attack? What if it was the zombie virus I'd seen in movies? I floored the accelerator, running 2 red lights before getting onto the elevated highway. The traffic was surprisingly green all the way home. When I finally reached my apartment, I locked the door and collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. Once I had calmed down, I messaged my best friend, Nana, who was studying in England. I described everything that had happened and shared my wild theory. There was no reply from her, so I decided to unpack the groceries I'd bought. As an introvert, I was used to stocking up on enough food for 2 weeks at a time. This time, my 2 huge bags were a lifeline. When I checked my phone again, Nana still hadn't responded. My group chats, however, were buzzing. My blood ran cold as I scrolled through the messages and videos. It wasn't a terrorist attack. It was zombies. A horrifying reality, not a movie. People were sharing clips of the virus spreading, just as I had foreseen. Bites or scratches from the infected would turn a person into a zombie in less than 10 seconds. These creatures were fast, tireless, and relentlessly hunted the living. They were hypersensitive to sound and light and could even smell people. This was a nightmare. I looked out the window. The streets were gridlocked, and people were already starting to turn. In a flash, they lunged at the living, tearing and biting. Cars swerved in a desperate attempt to escape. The streets were quickly becoming a bloodbath. My phone rang. It was Nana. With trembling hands, I answered. "I saw the messages," she said, her voice a low whisper. "It's the same here." It broke out. Her voice was filled with despair. "I'm on my way to the airport. I don't think I can come home." A sudden, terrified scream erupted from her end of the line, followed by guttural growls. The call disconnected. In the span of an hour, I had lost my best friend and the world had ended. I sank to the floor, pulling the curtains shut. The dread of my previous life resurfaced, but I pushed it down. I got up and went to the kitchen. The food I had stocked up on would last for months. The holiday gifts, the rice, flour, and oil from the spring lockdown were all still there. With the 2 bags I just bought, I knew I could survive. But I couldn't forget how I had died last time. It wasn't a zombie that killed me. It was a vicious couple from the 5th floor. Before I died, I saw the woman's sneer and the man's cruel stab. They took everything I had, mocking my helplessness. Filled with rage, I had used my last ounce of strength to grab the woman's leg. She stomped on my arm, but I held on. Her husband plunged the knife into me again and again. I died, clutching her leg, my hatred burning hotter than any pain. And now I was back. I panted, looking at the people around me, then at my phone. September. 1 month. The injustice of my death must have brought me back. This time I would be ready. I messaged Nana, urging her to get a COVID test and come home immediately. I told her it was urgent, not giving her the full story, afraid she wouldn't believe me. After my persistent pleading, she reluctantly agreed. With Nana's return secured, I felt a wave of relief. Since my father's death 3 years ago, I had no family. Nana and I had grown up together, and we were family to each other. Now, the rest of my plan was set in motion. Fortify my home and get revenge. My current 7th floor apartment was too vulnerable. I immediately rented the 16th floor eastern apartment in the same building. It was the top floor, far from the rest of the residents. Also, the western apartment on the same floor was being renovated, providing the perfect cover for my construction work. I hired a construction crew, paying them generously to start immediately. I checked my bank account. Over 6 million yuan. This was my father's life insurance money and the proceeds from our old house. This time, this money would be my salvation. I had the entire apartment soundproofed. I replaced the windows with bulletproof glass and the main door with a custom-made, bullet-resistant steel door. I installed thick felt carpets throughout the apartment to provide warmth, remembering the bone-chilling cold of that winter. I had died in November, a month where the cold, along with the lack of food and electricity, claimed countless lives. I installed surveillance cameras outside my door and in the hallway. On the 9th of September, 4 days after my rebirth, Nana messaged me from the quarantine hotel. She was safe. Now my focus shifted to stockpiling. Tomorrow was the Mid-Autumn Festival, and the supermarkets would be packed. It was the perfect opportunity to shop unnoticed. I hired a hacker to temporarily disable the building's surveillance cameras. I ordered 300 large water jugs, 2 crates each of cooking oil, soy sauce, and vinegar. I went to a dry goods store and bought 100 boxes of nuts and other snacks. They would last forever. I bought rice and flour from a store recommended by the nut shop owner. For now, I would hold off on frozen foods since I only had 1 refrigerator. I drove to a food wholesale market. It was a madhouse. I bought 100 boxes of instant noodles, 50 boxes of canned congee, 20 boxes of juice, and 50 boxes of other snacks. I also bought 20 electric toothbrushes, 2 crates of toothpaste, soap, and shampoo. I bought 50 bags of toilet paper and 3 crates of sanitary napkins. I even ordered 10 sets of skincare products online. Finally, I bought a few self-defense weapons before rushing back home. The water delivery came first. I quickly distributed the bottles throughout the apartment. Then, for the rest of the afternoon, I was busy with other delivery drivers, ferrying goods into my new home. By the evening, I felt a sense of immense satisfaction looking at my 2 bedrooms, which were now filled to the brim with supplies. To avoid the security cameras, I went out again that night and bought 20 high-capacity outdoor power banks, 2 crates of rechargeable batteries, and 5 drones. These would be invaluable. The power banks could charge a phone over 50 times. Took me 5 or 6 trips to the basement parking lot, but I got everything upstairs. Exhausted, I fell into a deep sleep. After the holiday, the opposite apartment started its renovation. I contacted a different construction company to install solar panels and a rainwater collection system on the rooftop, ensuring I had a reliable supply of water and electricity. On the small enclosed rooftop balcony, I placed a large reptile cage and bought 20 adult Rutan pheasants, 4 males and 16 females. They would provide us with fresh eggs and meat. I also bought mushroom spawn bags and a large amount of soil. I hoped they would provide a continuous supply of food. I also planted some cherry radishes, lettuce, garlic sprouts, and other fast-growing vegetables. To pass the time and prepare for the future, I bought a few backup iPads and phones. I downloaded everything I could find on survival and gardening, as well as a bunch of TV shows and movies. Remembering the harsh cold of the previous winter, I bought us each 5 sets of merino wool thermal wear, 10 sets of thick cold-resistant clothing, 10 pairs of snow boots, 5 mini heaters, 5 electric blankets, and 10 goose down quilts. I also bought 3 crates of adhesive body warmers. Once the solar and water systems were installed, I ordered a large industrial freezer. With the 2 smaller refrigerators I already had, I now had 3. I stocked the 2 home refrigerators with frozen hot pot ingredients and meat rolls. The industrial freezer was filled with beef, lamb, pork, and freshly slaughtered chicken. I also bought electric stoves and other appliances, knowing that gas would be cut off. I moved all the medical supplies, vitamins, and a first aid kit into a small room on the rooftop. I even bought some exercise equipment and 2 electricity generating bikes for us to stay in shape. Once Nana finished her quarantine, she came to my old apartment. I told her everything. She silently touched my forehead, thinking I had gone mad. I led her upstairs to show her the stockpile and the new fortifications. She was stunned and finally believed me. She asked why I had been reborn, but I could only shrug, saying, "My resentment must have been too deep." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she vowed to help me get revenge. I didn't want her to be in danger, but I knew I needed her help. We spent the remaining days checking our supplies and fortifying the apartment. As the days ticked by, we felt a growing sense of dread. 2 days before the outbreak, the renovation in the opposite apartment stopped. We decided to store another 300 jugs of water there. We found the owner's contact information and, under the pretext of checking out their renovation, got their key. We paid a hacker again to disable the cameras and moved the water. On the last day, October 5th, the day of the apocalypse, we replaced the emergency exit door with a fortified one. The couple from the 5th floor had used the emergency exit to get to me last time. We also had the elevator's 16th floor button disabled and then sealed the elevator door itself, along with the windows in the hallway. There could be no weak points. We stayed inside all day, refusing to go out. Around 4:40 p.m., I saw a video on a short video platform. It was the same employee, collapsing in the supermarket. I explained to Nana that the man was likely the first victim, and that the mall would soon fall into chaos. I looked down from my window. I saw Jiang Yufeng, Nana's crush, living on the 15th floor. In my previous life he was never here. I had assumed he had died on the road. I hesitated to tell Nana, but the selfish part of me won out. I didn't want to add another variable to the equation. The world quickly descended into the same chaos I remembered. The streets were filled with zombies, and traffic came to a halt. The city was a bloodbath. I held back tears, clutching the seat of the couch. I had to survive this time. I had to wait for rescue. After Jiang Yufeng disappeared into his unit, I called Nana to the window. We watched the tragedy unfold, people running for their lives, followed by a horde of shambling, grotesque zombies. It was like a movie, only much more horrifying. Nana couldn't bear to watch and hid on the couch, shaking. I comforted her, telling her our home was safe and that we had enough food for years. I knew she had to face this reality, but not all at once. The zombies were already roaming below, but they couldn't climb the stairs yet. In 2 weeks they would evolve. That's why our fortified doors and sealed hallways were crucial. I checked the building's group chat. It was a digital cacophony of panic, just like last time. People were asking for food and calling the police. Even with electricity and water, they were losing their minds. I knew this was just the beginning of the horror. Nana's phone buzzed with a message from Jiang Yufeng. He was worried about her. She looked at me, and I gave her a small nod. She messaged him back, assuring him she was safe but not revealing her location. I felt a pang of pride. She was adapting quickly. He told her to stay indoors. I knew this was only the beginning of our long fight for survival. I watched as Nana pushed her plate away. She could only manage a few bites of the sautéed vegetables. The smell of blood from downstairs and the sight of bodies had killed her appetite. "You need to eat," I insisted, not wanting to waste a single morsel. "It's going to be hard to get a meal like this again." I took the dish and finished the rest, cleaning the plate completely. I then went up to the rooftop to check on my rotten pheasants and the vegetables I'd planted. Below, Nana washed the dishes, taking advantage of the running water to fill every empty container she could find. The apartment was a fortress of soundproofing. The thick, blackout curtains were drawn, and the windows were covered with one-way film, ensuring no one from the outside could see a flicker of light or a shadow, preventing any suspicion that the 16th floor was inhabited. In our building's group chat, the property management began a survey, asking residents to list the number of people in their apartments. In my last life, everyone thought they were preparing to distribute supplies. The management had even promised to give out holiday gifts they hadn't handed out yet. The residents, eager for any help, changed their names in the group to their apartment numbers and filled out the forms with their family information. Nobody could have known this was a trap. The cruel management staff would later steal all the supplies and abandon the residents. This heartless act gave others ideas, and soon, a few opportunistic residents started breaking into empty apartments to steal whatever they could find. I remembered how the couple from the 5th floor had been so polite and friendly before the apocalypse. But they knew who lived in each apartment. I had avoided filling out the form, but they still knew I lived alone. They came in the middle of the night, knowing I would be an easy target. This time I watched the chat, seeing many people fall for the same trick, but I stayed silent. The first ones to speak up were the first targets. My priority was keeping Nana and myself safe. I wasn't going to risk our lives for strangers. I kept a close eye on Jiang Yufeng's actions. He also remained silent and didn't change his name in the group, suggesting he didn't trust the property management either. 7 days after the outbreak, just as in my previous life, the property management and security team made their move. Under the cover of darkness, they looted all the empty apartments and fled. The remaining residents watched helplessly, a cold fury rising within them. I felt a sense of relief. With the management gone, there was no one left to question the work that had been done on the 16th floor. On the 8th day, the owner of a convenience store in the building group chat posted a new price list. All the prices had doubled. Despite a few complaints, the orders came flooding in. Survival trumped all other concerns. The owner used a drone to deliver the goods, a brilliant and effective method. People were spending huge sums of money, their desperation palpable. But after noon, the owner announced they were out of stock, claiming the drone needed to be charged. I knew he was just playing a clever game, hoarding the remaining supplies for himself after selling off the most coveted items for a high price. That night, the second convenience store, which had remained silent, was looted. I watched through a drone as a group of people broke in, frantically grabbing food. The noise they made attracted the zombies, who quickly surrounded the store. 7 people were trapped inside. They knew their chances were slim. A man from a young couple with a small child used a noisy alarm clock to distract the zombies, buying them a moment to escape. The couple made it, but the other 5 had a much harder journey. 2 were immediately torn apart by the zombies. Another man managed to make it back to his unit, but I saw through the drone that his arm was badly scratched. He jumped out of a second-floor window to get away. On the 15th day, just as I remembered, the zombies evolved. They were faster and their senses were sharper. The weather also took a sudden turn, and the temperature plummeted. Luckily, Nana and I were prepared. We had thick carpets, blankets, and thermal clothing. The building's electricity and water were cut off on the 15th, plunging everyone into darkness and cold. During this time, Jiang Yufeng contacted Nana a few times through our drones. He asked if she needed food and told her to stay safe. He had clearly stocked up as well and genuinely cared for her. With him and me by her side, Nana's fear began to fade. She spent her days chatting with him through notes we'd send back and forth with the drone. When the power went out, their communication stopped. Nana worried about him constantly. That night, I went to the rooftop and harvested some rotten pheasant eggs and some vegetables. I turned on the grow lights to keep the plants from freezing. I made a delicious meal of boiled eggs, spicy pork, and steamed rice. We ate in the warmth of our thick blankets, watching a movie on an iPad. The apartment was a haven, a small pocket of normalcy in a world gone mad. We dared not open the windows until late at night, letting the cold air in after all was silent outside. A few days later, a cold snap hit the city. Nana and I plugged in our electric blankets and turned on our small heaters. We layered blankets and clothes, staying warm while we watched movies on the iPad. On the rooftop, I had to place heaters near the plants to keep them alive. One night, as snow fell, I flew a drone to the 5th floor. The couple I hated was there, their bodies frozen. The cookie I had left as a surprise had been eaten. It was a shallow revenge, but the thought of the karma made me feel a little better. I saw no zombies, and it seemed they had simply succumbed to the cold. When the drone came back, Nana and I shivered from the draft. I looked at her, and then I knew what I had to do. I urged her to message Jiang Yufeng and invite him to join us. She was overjoyed and immediately sent a drone with the message. But he refused. He said he was worried about making noise and drawing attention to us. He insisted he was fine on his own. I understood, but I didn't want him to be alone. I sent a drone back, urging him to climb from his main bedroom window to our apartment, as that side of the building was not overlooked by any other unit. He agreed and we made a plan. We lowered a rope, and he sent up his belongings first. Then he climbed the rope himself, joining us in the safety of our apartment. He had to sleep on the living room sofa, but with thick blankets and a warm cup of tea from Nana, he was comfortable. I discreetly left them alone, returning to my room to watch my movie. The next morning, Nana got up early and went to the rooftop to harvest fresh vegetables and eggs. She cooked a delicious meal of fried eggs, congee, and dumplings to celebrate his arrival. Later, we had a hot pot for lunch. As we ate, we chatted about our experiences. Jiang Yufeng was shocked by our stockpile but respected our privacy, not asking too many questions. I was relieved. My secret about being reborn was for me and Nana alone. The snow continued for more than 2 weeks, burying the zombies. The extreme cold seemed to have wiped them out. A few more snowstorms followed, and by the time the weather warmed up, the zombies were gone. 6 months after the outbreak, the army finally arrived. We were rescued, along with the other survivors. The destroyed area was cleaned and sanitized to prevent any further outbreaks. Nana and Jiang Yufeng were the first couple in our area to get married after the apocalypse, starting their new life together.